Hi guys, Brad here from shockbleeder.com. I just want to demonstrate how to do a Ohlins TTX shock, and today I'm going to use a wall mount shock bleeder, but the same thing would work on the regular shock bleeder. So the first thing is to get your shock bleeder full of oil. So I just unscrew the bottle and I fill it up about 3/4 of the way full. Okay, this shock has already been serviced. I had it apart, I revalved it. There's a little bit of oil in it because I had to do a retake on this video. So there's a few ounces of oil in it, but normally it would be completely empty. I've got the reservoir cap off. I've got a 6mm threaded rod like this one in here, and it's threaded into the floating piston and it's pushed all the way in, so my piston's all the way at the top right now. And then with it at the top, I take some kind of tape. Here I got orange tape and it's set right at the end of the reservoir so I can tell how far the piston is in. Right now it's all the way in. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug in the shock bleeder, and I like to suspend the lines like this so I can look at them and see air in the lines. So on this Ohlins adapter, you got to be really gentle with them. They break easy, so you just hand tight is really fine. Just a little bit more, just barely, okay, or this will break. There's not a lot of metal on this. It's really small threads and it's hollow, so they will snap. So be gentle with that. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and pull a vacuum on this thing. Okay, I've got the shock bleeder under full vacuum right now. There's some oil and air coming out of the shock because, like I said, it did have some oil in it already. But the main thing is we're going to get most of that out right now and get it under vacuum. You don't need to let it sit too long. 10 seconds is fine, 20 seconds. Okay, it's still coming out, but not much. So I've got, on this side I've got compressed air hooked up. And I've got it set at about 40 psi, maybe 50 at the most. The safety valves on these are set at 70 psi, but you don't want to go above 50 psi. So let's go ahead and push some oil back into the shock. Okay, I'm going to set it, I got it set right about 45 psi. This particular TTX shock, I don't know why, it's really a sticky one. Okay, the pistons come out. So my piston came all the way out, or it's about to. It's coming out, the oil's dropping. There, my piston's out, but my shock shaft didn't come out on this one, so I'm just gonna help it. Okay? And now I'm gonna add a little, now as those came out, I lost some air, so I'm gonna go ahead and open it back up and get it, now I got it at about 50 psi. If you get your regulator on your air tank set to 50, then you don't need to sit here. You can just open it all the way and it'll sit at 50. I got mine set a little bit high right now, so you can get that dialed in so you don't have to do that. You can just open it, leave it open. Okay, now it's off. I got 50 psi pushing on the oil in here. Now this is the difference between the video that I did like 2 or 3 years ago, the original video that most people have watched. I don't just pull vacuum and then push the oil multiple times anymore. What I do is I do this maybe twice. Just the first time is just to push oil in and purge this oil fill line, the blue side, okay? Once it's, so I would push it, put it under vacuum, push it once, do that a second time, so that the second time I push oil in, I'm not pushing any air back in. There's still going to be some air in there though. So here's how I've been doing it, and it works really well. What I do is I go ahead and disconnect. I'm not going to use the vacuum pump anymore. I only used it for 1 or 2 pulls. Now I'm not going to use it anymore, okay? What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to let out some air slowly. I'm going to let out some air, and I want to keep like Okay, I'm gonna keep 15 PSI of pressure on that oil. I don't want it at 0 when I do this because it tends to foam up, so I want to keep a little bit of pressure on it. Now, some people say what I'm about to do is not necessary or it's not the right way. Everybody's got a right way. There's no right way or wrong way necessarily. This works for me. This is how I do it. I really like it because I can sit here and look at these check valves, and I know once the air makes it past my bleed check valve, it's never coming back in. So what I do is I just go ahead and do this manually. Okay, I can see the air. I saw some air come, and I just cycle this by hand. Okay. I used to use the vacuum pump every time and do this, but it's not that hard to push. Just do it by hand. You can see the bubbles go past, and since the fill line comes from the bottom of the bottle, and there's a check valve there, the air can never come back in. Once that air bubble gets past this bleed side, it's not coming back in. And you can feel any air when you do this. If there's air in there, you feel it at the top of the stroke here. Okay? Okay, so I just did that 3 or 4 times. No more air is coming out. It feels good. It's already done. It's that easy, okay? This is the easiest way to do it. You can do it on an Ohlins shock. You can do it on a KTM shock. It doesn't matter. You do 1 or 2 pull and then push cycles, okay, using your vacuum pump and your compressed air. And then I just go ahead and let out. I take my vacuum line off and I let it out to about 15 PSI, and I just cycle it by hand and I watch to get rid of those bubbles. Okay, it works really well. And then once you're done, with this line's disconnected, so now I'm gonna let the air out. Okay, the whole system now is sitting at 0 PSI. It's vented to atmosphere. This is important to have this off when you do this so that the oil can come up and everything is at 0 PSI. So now, this is all bled and full of oil how I want it. So now all I'm gonna do is, this is a little bit tough. It takes a little bit of work to do this. You might need some gloves. I'm just going to get a tool. This is just a tap wrench. This is the hardest part. It's just getting this piston back where it should be. Okay, now I'm all sweaty. That was pretty hard. You know, the orifice on this bleeder is pretty small on the Ohlins shock, so it takes some effort to get that piston back in. And it's about 100 degrees in my garage right now, so basically it's done. So now what I did was I pushed that piston back up so that I've got about 1 centimeter. That's about as much as you need, maybe a little less, 7 or 8 millimeters, centimeter. Not even sure what Ohlins specs, you can look at their spec. Okay, so that piston's up and I got a little gap at the top inside there, and I can tell because of where my tape is from where I marked it. So that's done. This is still sitting at 0 and it's vented, so when I take this off, I'm not going to lose. I might get a little bit of oil out of it, but not much. Okay. Okay, nothing came out, and I can see the oil is right there at the top. It's just how I want it. Okay. Seal that back up. Okay. Here's the reservoir cap. I'm not gonna put this in. I'm gonna have to get out a hammer and tap it in, but this thing pops back in and you can fill it with your nitrogen. It's that simple. And the same thing goes for WP shock. I just do a couple pulls and pushes and then cycle it by hand and watch the bubbles come out, and then set the piston at the end before you add your nitrogen. Works great. Thank you.